Hi, now we are at Modernism, which the book is defined as approximately 1910 to 1965. However, again, as it says, keep in mind the qualities listed do not always apply to each and every writer termed modernist. In fact, one of the things to think about with modernism, while you see the date 1910, modernism in many cases is a response to World War I. It's greatly affected by that war, which brought carnage at levels never seen before, particularly in Europe. As a result of World War I, there was a great deal of distrust about institutions, particularly institutions of church, government, the aristocracy and tradition. And this kind of questioning, if you will, leads also to the questioning of traditional modes of writing, which we saw heavily in the Victorian era and even in the Edwardians. One very important concept of modernism is the rejection of a concept of absolute truth. We start to see the rise of what we might call relativism, or the notion that life is subjective. And we need to look at an incident or conditions from different points of view, from subjective experience, because there is no such thing in the human as objective experience. There's increased experimentation in the writing, especially with form, but also subject matter. And there's a distrust of realism, or sometimes referred to as materialism. The idea that we can somehow just simply know things by looking at them. Part of this is greatly influenced by the works of Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung. So in other words, if we thought everything on the surface is all that was there, Freud and Jung and other psychologists say, no, there's a great deal going on that is not evident on the surface. And hence we get things such as the Oedipal complex, death drive, archetypes, and other paths into, let's call it, motivations that are not immediately obvious. One of the aspects of modernism that is sometimes was called frustrating for writers or readers is that they use a lot of illusions. That is, they make references to works. And they're not necessarily popular works or well-known works. Oftentimes they're arcane, meaning kind of rare, that they are the subject of only a few people's experience and a few people's reading. And therefore, reading authors such as Yeats, Joyce, T.S. Eliot, Virginia Woolf is often a sort of literary detective work. That is, we're trying to find what's going on because it's not, again, immediately obvious on the surface. It's sort of a game in which we have to try to find meanings. This is evident especially in T.S. Eliot, who supplied copious footnotes for many of his own poems, especially, of course, The Wasteland. So it's a kind of a game of, can you really figure this out? This detective work, by very definition, narrows the writer's audience, meaning the writers are very self-consciously elite, writing for educated people. And thus we could fairly say that modernism has brought us 180 degrees away from romanticism. You remember William Wordsworth wanting to write poetry that could be read by the common person, right? The simple language, the simple subject matter. Not so with modernism. Modernism really requires study, attention, and quite frankly, a lot of other knowledge that you have to bring to it, which is why we have footnotes in our textbooks to help us out a great deal. But reading modernism without that help can be very, very frustrating.